Ryan, see if he's on the line. Get it? On the line. Oh, hey. He's from the South East on Track Pressure Lobby Group regarding possibility of the reopening of the Waterford to Rosslare rail line. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you keeping?
I'm good. Thank you very much for talking to me. Firstly, the South East on Track Lobby Group. Talk to me about the group, please, Joe, and what your aims are, not just locally, but also, I suppose, nationally.
Well, South East on Track, I suppose, grew out of the group that opposed a number of years back the closure of rail passenger services between Waterford and Rosslare. The line closed in 2010, and we've been there in the background subsequently, maybe highlighting the need for maintenance and so on. But we have grown, and we've grown beyond Wexford and Wexford County, and we have grown into the South East. And we're actively highlighting and trying to draw government attention to the possibility of financing further the rail network through the South East. If you look at a map of Ireland, most of the railway lines lead to Dublin, and by comparison to many other countries, the cross-regional or inter-regional rail services, they simply aren't there. So we're looking to counterbalance in the South East the investment that some parts of the country have got, and particularly maybe in the Dublin region, to provide for greater regional access to rail passenger services.
I know this story very well, as you know, Joe. In my previous job, I actually did a piece on the importance of this rail line a couple of months before it closed. Some people say if ever I did a story on something, I'd be the harbinger of death, which is not the case. And I rode the rail line, as they say, early morning, drove down, got a lift down to Rosslare and came up then into beautiful Waterford on the particular morning. And it was gorgeous, and it was a lovely scenic rail line. But the economic figures, they just didn't add up. And has that changed?
Primarily that railway which served Rosslare Harbour was a railway which more or less its hinterland was Munster, and it was built to connect right through to Mallow and along the area down through Dungarvan. But it primarily ended up providing a route for beet to the sugar factory in Mallow. Once that the country got out of the beet business and sugar, that traffic basically disappeared, and in the end there was just a small passenger service provided by it. Insofar as, I suppose, the decision in Britain by Britain to leave the EU in 2016, it has fundamentally changed an awful lot in relation to transport in Ireland. It certainly has provided in Rosslare a massive boost to the amount of containers that have gone in, and the business and how we trade as a nation with countries on continental Europe. That has changed too. Many of the ports that Rosslare trades with are tier 1 ports, which have the capacity to lift on and lift off rail freight. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is in relation to passenger services, is that the nature, I suppose, of Waterford has changed. We now have a university, and many students would have accessed Waterford using that line during term time. We have an accommodation crisis where accommodation for students in Waterford is the market rate is quite exorbitant, and in my view, certainly in relation to accessing education or accessing services in Waterford, it makes good sense to reconsider redeveloping rail services, not just from Wexford to Waterford, but Waterford and the Technical University of the South East. There's a campus in Carlow, it has a campus in Waterford, there's plans to build and extend the campus in Wexford. There's also another campus up in I think in Rathnure or Ashford up in County Wicklow. University towns and university campuses need to be connected by public transport. There is no public transport between Wexford and certainly Kilkenny and a place like that. To move people who want to go to college or to move, it provides good sense that you could have, say, for argument's sake, a train that might originate in Dublin, come down through Carlow and Waterford, come across through Wexford and go up that way to Wicklow and the campus there. It makes good practical and logistical sense to provide these connections. People are now moving and behaving in a different way to what they might have maybe traditionally when they access Rosslare Harbour for passenger ships to go to Britain.
I get what you're.
And we should.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're. I get what you're saying, and you're saying things have changed and times are different now, and the Southeast Technological University is a game changer from what I'm hearing from you. Now, let me put the point to you that there are buses, private buses, and then obviously Bus Éireann may run some buses as well between different places. The difference between that and setting up and reinstigating rail lines is a massive difference. So it's grand putting a bus on the road. Economics has to come into it, and I remember, Joe, and you remember these arguments. Remember at the time Inroad Éireann saying, yeah, there wasn't the numbers there. Now there may well be more numbers there now, but do we know for sure that this would be economically viable, or are you looking at saying that it would be a good thing to do, but we don't really know how much it's going to cost?
We do, because we submitted a business case to the rail review, and the business case is also sent to a number of councillors in Waterford alongside all the councillors in Wexford. The business case goes through in detail the cost of restoring rail services, and the Irish Rail figure is 12 to 18 million to return it to where it was in 2010. If you want to go up the line in terms of a higher specification, obviously there's going to be a higher cost, and that cost would be 70 million. But by comparison to certainly providing rail freight, as I think the Minister has indicated to recently, providing 70 million in the area of upgrading a rail line, it is not extraordinary an amount of money, given the potential for connecting Waterford onward up through Limerick and through Galway, and onward as it will presumably be if this rail strategy is released to Claremorris, opening up, providing access for rail freight to go to Waterford from the west of Ireland. That has a knock-on value of freeing slots on other railways in the Dublin vicinity, which are actually useful for passengers there. So you're not just getting the value of providing public transport and possibly rail freight transport down here. You're freeing up automatically spaces elsewhere in the country. And what Irish Rail will tell us is that in relation to the Dublin area, first of all, we know that Dublin Port is chock-a-block, and to get containers in and out of there is problematic. But also the Dart and suburban rail is taking up a high proportion in terms of the management of the rail infrastructure there. It makes actually very good sense to reorientate, to provide regional connections without the need to go through Dublin. And that's something that South Eastern Tracker have very, very strongly submitted in relation to the All-Ireland Rail Review, which we hope the report is going to come out soon. And it's a point that we consistently make.
And one of the points that was made at the time, and in terms of lifting tracks, and we've seen it in other areas, once the tracks are lifted, if a railway is turned into a greenway, and a lot of people will talk about how great greenways are, but once the tracks are lifted, there's never a chance to go back. It's gone forever.
Well, I suppose, to be fair, I wouldn't necessarily be that negative, because we see the possibility in the rail review of a restoration of services between Dublin and Navan, albeit 40 or 50 years afterwards. However, after the rail passenger services were suspended, the NTA put in place from 2010 onwards a care and maintenance agreement on that railway to provide for services that would run at a maximum of 20 miles an hour, which actually would be the sort of speed that maybe freight might possibly move at, given the weight and so on of trains. So that railway, as of now, is passable. There's a problem in relation to the Barrow Bridge, that a ship struck it, and it's not possible obviously at the minute, but there's an insurance case, and Irish Rail obviously will be compensated by the insurers for the vessel, and that will be restored
just on that, Joe,
working condition.
Just on that, Joe, is that restoration put into your cost analysis?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because we submitted this in 2020. We prepared in
Before
2021.
the thing
So
happened,
obviously the bridge strike was only last February. So it isn't. But you know, the reality were the railway to be removed and a greenway, someone would have to take responsibility for the Barrow Bridge and the expenses. So is that to be Wexford County Council? We don't know, because Wexford County Council, in relation to their plan for Greenway, never produced a business plan. They happened to submit a planning application or an application for funding to the government, let alone agreed a licensing agreement with Irish Rail. So their plan has never effectively moved. But to be fair to them, and one of the things that I'm very, very positive in Greenways, because I've walked the Greenway between Waterford and Dungarvan, and it's absolutely first class. And the reason why is because you've got critical mass in Waterford, you've critical mass in Dungarvan, you've got a wonderfully attractive countryside, and that Greenway works very successfully in conjunction, say, with Tramore. But there are other greenways in the country that aren't as successful. I do think when the Greenway opens in a few months between Ferrybank and Euross, it is equally going to be successful, because you're looking at the town and you're looking at the other things that people look for when they go for something like maybe a walk. That infrastructure isn't at present in South Wexford, where they're small villages.
Okay.
And were the council to consider continuing that, as I know Carol are keen to connect up to Borris or up through St Mullins, if, let's say, for argument's sake, Wexford were to look at the remainder of that disused railway over in the direction you Ross, I'm absolutely convinced that there is the makings of a really first-class infrastructure in the southeast for greenways that would, I think, be a model for other regions to follow, where you could have greenways and railways both working together.
Okay. Joe, good to talk to you again. Mind yourself. We'll keep this debate going. Really appreciate it.